Hello, everyone. Welcome to this live where we're talking all about formal and informal English. Are you communicating appropriately, especially in work, in the workplace? And yeah, so welcome if you are joining live or if you are listening or watching to the recording later. I would be very happy to answer any of your questions in the comments or after when you listen or watch this. And yeah, go ahead and get into this. I'm really excited to share with you some very practical tips on how you can do it and some of the things that are just not the ordinary advice that you hear all the time on speaking formally or informally in English. I think it's a really important topic that a lot of my clients wonder about, that they want to ensure that they are making the right impression in every situation, whether that is because you're probably going to encounter both of these situations or these situations in work as a legal professional, going to high level conferences, doing presentations, attending important meetings. That's the formal and the semi formal side of English, using that. And then there's the after work parties, happy hour, social networking. It depends on you, but what I find a lot of my clients, let me know in the comments, which one do you struggle most with? Which one are you most fearful of? Are you more fearful of the formal situations, like the high level, high stake conferences, or the networking events, the networking and kind of social get-togethers? I suppose both of them have their own challenges, but I am surprised often that my advanced level speakers of English who are legal professionals, they often struggle with the social situations, the informal situations, because often if you're using English quite a bit in work, day to day, you might be sending a lot of emails, you might be helping to draft contracts, or you might be, instrumental in that, leading the drafting of a contract. All of that is very formal English, so you're quite used to that. So that is something that often the informal English can be a struggle, and you're not so sure about it. And I think that the important thing to think about for the advantages of being formal, like why do we want to speak formally in English? Yes, for these to be appropriate in these certain situations, like a conference, a presentation, a meeting. But the reason we want to speak in a certain way, in a formal way, and I'm just going to look at my notes, sorry if I'm looking down, but I just wanted to make sure I had it. Yeah, it's to show respect and show your expertise. That's the reason that you want to communicate more formally, to show respect to other people and also to show your expertise, to show yourself as an expert. So making the right impression to your colleagues, clients, potential clients. That is the reason. And then on the other side, the informal expression of why you want to communicate in that way informally is to show off your personality, to show warmth, to be friendly. And sometimes it's hard to go from one to another smoothly, but I hope these tips can help you. So I want to keep this under 30 minutes if I can. And I have four, let's see, one, two, three, four, four main points. And do listen to the end because they're all really, really good tips, very practical. And before I get into it, I'm not going to be telling you how to say hello, hi, or how are you, or how are things, or giving you these phrases like that, like which one is better. I mean, I think in most cases, when you greet someone, hello kind of covers all bases. Hello as a formal or informal greeting is fine. You can also say hi, and you hear many different variations of all these kinds of greetings. That's kind of a basic level of communicating formally or informally, and I think you probably know that at this stage. So these are much more advanced tips that I'm going to be giving you. And What was the other thing I was going to say? Yeah, I think as well, just to mention that speaking, communication is a very personal and also very cultural thing. So it can really depend from person to person and from culture to culture. And I think whether, depending on what culture you come from, whether you're from an Asian country, a European country, South American, African country, Middle Eastern, you're going to have different cultural norms in that way. And you may find British and Irish that they are very polite and very formal. It could be even less polite than, well, I don't know if that's if that is possible. But yeah, in general, British and Irish are seen as very polite and a bit more reserved than US communication. Um, Again, this happened to me. This is very, I need to put my phone in airplane mode. This happened to me when I was recording again, and I'm sorry about that. But I'm sure you've been there with your phone going off in an important meeting. So that's definitely a don't. Don't do what I do and leave your phone on when you're having an important formal event. But anyway, um, yeah, what I was saying about culture, yeah, so it can really depend. Um, as a person, I would say I speak fairly semi-formally a lot. I think as well, living in another country that is not your country. So I live in France and I speak French and English. I speak English still a lot at home, but I am not around people from my country, just my family when I visit and I speak to them, but I'm not around the people that I from my country or from my city. So all of those kind of regional expressions and slang as well, I'm not using day to day, which is a bit sad, but it's just the way it is. So I think it can really depend on personal circumstances, and the more international kind of setting the communication is in, the more I would say the more, yeah, general you need to be with your communication and probably more formal, you will notice. Okay, so let's get into my first tip. And it's probably my favorite because I put it at number one. It's about, when I come back to the formal being about showing respect and showing your expertise, you are trying to take you out of the equation. You're not being as personal and you're being a little bit more um, a little bit more general, a little bit more detached. That's the idea of being formal. And with the informal, you're showing your personality, you're showing that warmth, and you're using I and you're putting yourself in there. I'm going to give you two sentences and I'm going to explain the difference. So you have in on the informal side the sentence, I think this is an effective plan. I think this is an effective plan. And then on the formal side, this could be an effective plan. Do you notice a difference here? So I think this is an effective plan, and this could be an effective plan. What is the difference here between there's a few things that you could say about it. First of all, you hear that in the informal version, it's I think. So you're putting in your opinion there. You're also putting in I there. You're using a personal pronoun. So you're putting yourself in that sentence. I think this is an effective plan. And the other one for the formal, this could be an effective plan. Notice that there's no I, there's no personal feeling there, and we also use could. Could is a type of modal verb, and it's showing as well like a little bit of uncertainty or a little bit of caution in what you're saying. So instead of saying I think, this could replaces it, but in a more neutral, formal way. So using modal verbs like could and may and might is a good way to communicate formally in English, and it's in a very appropriate way. So just, I would say with the formal, think about using modal verbs. And for informal, think about using more personal pronouns and also giving your opinion to show that personality, to show that friendliness and warmth. And on the other side, with the formal, to show your expertise and give that correct impression of being a bit more neutral and detached. So I'll give you another example. I will need your support, and support may be needed on this. You see the difference there? I will need your support. It's with the personal pronoun. You're expressing your own need for this support, and then support may be needed on this. Again, removing the I and using may instead. So talking about it being maybe, not sure. Okay, so I really like this tip. I think it's a very practical one and very easy to apply as well. So yeah, do let me know if you have any questions on that. But yeah, that's the first tip then. So using personal pronouns, your opinion as well in the informal, and then in the formal using more modal verbs, using could, may to express some kind of caution of what you're saying, but also detaching yourself a little bit. Number 2 is using, now don't be afraid, don't worry if you don't fully understand the active and passive voice. It's quite simple when you can see the examples, but using an active voice tense for informal and using the passive voice tense for formal. So let me explain. Let me give you an example. I wrote the report, and the report is written. So I wrote the report is, again, you can see that I there. So you're thinking, yeah, that's definitely more of an informal one. And yeah, you would be right. It's an active sentence. But then we have I is the subject, wrote is the verb, and the report is the object. We change the order. We take the report, which is the object of that sentence, which is it's the object, it's the topic. It's not you, it's the report. It's something neutral. And then you start the report with the sentence with to be plus past participle. That is the passive voice. The report is written. And the clever thing about the passive voice is you don't need to talk about you. You can say the report is written by me, but you don't need to say by me. You can just say the report is written. So you see, you're giving that neutrality again, and keeping it quite formal. And as a good definition of the passive voice is, it's used to show interest in the person or object. So it's used to show more, it's showing more, putting more emphasis on the object, in this case, the report, and less emphasis on the person that performs the action. So you can take away that responsibility as well. It's a very useful one. You can take away that personal involvement. It's much more neutral and formal as a statement. Let me give you some other examples. You could say, I fixed the problem, or the problem was fixed on the 12th of May. So again, I fixed the problem. It's more informal and more personal. And the problem was fixed. It's much more distant and formal. Okay, so that is point number 2. And number 3 is, yeah, this one is important, but I think it's something that, we need to use sparingly, and we don't want to get obsessed with learning all of these, because I think often, and we get this a lot from marketing online, teachers saying, don't say thank you, say I am grateful, like giving you alternative words to use for perfectly okay words in English. So so basically this point is about small words, and phrasal verbs are more informal, and big words, which are usually from Latin derivatives, are more formal. So that's very useful for European speakers, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, French. There'd be a lot in common with the words that you use in your language, with English. As you can probably know, there are, many words, many similar words. You need to be careful with those false friends that don't mean the same thing, but like in your language and in English. But often, as a rule, there are like a lot of these words are very close between the European languages and English. Things like inform, establish, what else? Legalize, these kinds of words. So the first thing I would say is let's talk first of all about phrasal verbs versus verbs that are more from Latin origins. So, as I was saying at the beginning, we can get really obsessed with learning loads and loads and loads of phrasal verbs and using them. But I think it's a bit like, when you're cooking, you have a sauce with onions and tomato, and then you sprinkle a little bit of cumin or chili on top. But you only want, it's funny, I didn't think I would be talking about cooking in this discussion. But anyway, I think it's a good analogy. So you sprinkle that bit of chili on top of your sauce. It gives it an extra kick, a bit of spice, but you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to put loads and loads, or it's just going to kill the whole sauce. And the actual sauce, the actual base of it is, the essentials, the tomato, the onion, the garlic. I don't know, garlic is maybe a spice, but yeah, the onion and the tomato that make it that essential sauce. You could probably get away without using any spices, and it would still be a good sauce. You could still eat it and it would be fine, it would be acceptable. I think that's the same approach you need to have with these phrasal verbs because we can get really obsessed with them and they're not always necessary. It's important that you understand these phrasal verbs, but not always important that you use them. And just so I get into, in case you don't know what a phrasal verb is, I'll give you an example. So the classic one of the ones that a lot of my intermediate student will learn is I get on well with him. That's the phrasal verb, to get on well or to get on with someone, or I have a good relationship with someone, or I connect well with someone. So the formal one is I have a good relationship or I connect well with him. And then the informal is I get on well with him. That's the phrasal verb, get on well. So it's usually a verb and a particle, usually a preposition. So in this case, there are three parts to it with the preposition get on, get on. Yeah, get is the verb, on is the preposition. And then with, it's an extra preposition. So it's usually get on with or get on well with, get on badly with someone. So, yes, in informal situations, we're going to hear that more. It's going to be more common to hear, to use that, of course, the phrasal verbs. And native speakers have a tendency to use them all the time. I think we even don't realize that we can be really confusing with them. If you have no awareness of, English as a foreign language, or don't really have foreign friends or colleagues, yeah, native speakers can just use them very naturally and forget that it could be quite confusing, like what is get, what is on, what does it have to do with relationships. So I think the most important thing with phrasal verbs is being able to understand, firstly. And then if you're really, really comfortable with them, you can, of course, use them, and they're good for sprinkling on top of that sauce to give it a bit of spice, a bit of kick, and it will help with that friendliness and warmth in your informal communication. But again, it's not the essential part. The essential part is the structure, the grammar, I would say, the way you say something, even the pronunciation. So phrasal verbs, just don't get too obsessed with them. That's all I will say. But I'll give you another one. So he was laid off from his job and he was dismissed from his job. So to lay off someone from their job or to dismiss someone from their job, it's the same thing. And you can usually guess from the context what someone says. And of course, lay off is much more informal, but you can use dismiss, and it's in an informal situation, it's not going to be a big deal. It's perfectly acceptable. On the other hand, if you use lay off in a more formal situation, I think that can be a bit more problematic. So you see, if you're a European speaker and you have all of these Latin-based words and you already know them quite well, it's going to be a piece of cake. It's going to be quite easy for you. So yeah, there's not a lot to worry about there. The other thing with using big words, well, I have two more examples. So yeah, the first one is instead of saying somebody told me to like sorry, I'm gonna get I will the video tells customers about healthy eating. Instead of saying tell, you could say the video informs people about healthy eating. So instead of tell, you say inform for a more formal verb. But to be honest, this kind of a tip, yes, it does certainly elevate it, and I think it's great for written communication. You know, when you're looking at a piece of writing and you really want to get that tone across, inform could be a better choice, or maybe in a email, yeah, inform. It's less it's less direct and less kind of so it's more detached. But when you're speaking, you can of course you tell it's not really a big problem. But there are many lists you can find on this. This is something that I do have in my accelerator program to help you elevate your English between informal and formal vocabulary and phrases. But yeah, it's something to practice and to think about definitely in terms of going between informal and formal. Okay, and then there's a good one here about if you were saying, oh, can you say hello to your wife and children. Well, another way would be to um, give my regards to your wife and children. So that's a more formal expression than say hello to. So I think, if you were in a formal situation and you said to give my regards to, um, if you said say hello to, it wouldn't be a big problem. I think it's only if you said give my regards to in an informal situation that would be a bit strange. So yeah, usually, sometimes when there's that crossover between formal and informal. So I think just before I said that if you used a phrasal verb like to be laid off in a formal situation, it would be strange. But if you use some formal expression like to give my regards in an informal situation, it might be a bit strange as well. So you really have to think about that kind of tone when you're communicating. But I would say overall, and there's a lot of information there, and I think I'm on point 3. Yeah, I have one more point. Keep it simple. English is very simple. English is all about communicating in a simple, clear, concise way. And unlike some other languages that I can think of, especially the European languages, again, they have often really long sentences, and it's often you show your expertise by being more expressive and by conveying your points in a large amount of words and saying a lot and explaining a lot. In English, it's often very direct. So think about that and think about keeping it simple. Yeah. And the last thing I want to talk about is a pronunciation point, and it's all about the use of contractions. And I'm sure you've seen that before, and I find that a lot of my clients, when they're reading and they're speaking, they will avoid using contractions. I think, a little bit afraid of mispronouncing it or something like that. With a contraction, so a contraction is like instead of it is, it's its. Instead of they are, it's their. So the formal is without it, it is, they are, and then the informal is the contraction, it's there. And to be honest, I think there's quite a bit of crossover with contractions that, again, with native speakers, we don't even realize we're using so many contractions. And again, it can be so confusing and difficult to understand natives when they when they speak, because it's just so natural and it's hard to follow sometimes because we're using them all the time. In informal situations, we can still use contractions. Yeah, I think, like, maybe, like, contractions like it's and there are fine. Things like gonna and wanna, they're very informal. So, like, avoid those. So I'm going to go. I'm gonna go. That's more informal. I'm gonna go. So you wouldn't use that in a formal situation. But things like it's and there would be acceptable in definitely semi-formal, if not formal situations. But on the reverse, if you're going to a more informal situation, you're not going to sound so warm, you're not going to sound so friendly if you don't use a contraction. If you say it is cloudy, they are happy, it does sound a little bit stiff and not very informal, not very relaxed if you keep using those full form verbs. So it's a very good idea to practice using contractions when you're reading them. Try to listen to videos, to audio of natives using them, and pay attention. You might think it's a small thing, but using these and overusing 10 million phrasal verbs is going to really help your informal communication. It's going to, it's not so much the words you're using, but it's that tone and how you're speaking that's going to be appropriate in these situations, in informal situations. It's going to make your English more relaxed and just sound more friendly and natural. And that's really what you want, isn't it? So, uh, yeah, contractions and full forms, that is point number 4. And we're at 26 minutes now. So I have been talking for quite a while about this, but it is a really great topic, a really important topic, especially as a legal professional in these kinds of situations. And it can be very hard when you're negotiating contracts all day to try to switch to a more informal tone, networking, all of that. And before I finish, I just wanted to talk about the the programs I have. The reason that I created them was exactly for the purposes of helping you communicate in formal and informal situations to really help improve your English speaking fluency so that you can take that next step in your international career. I want you so that you don't miss those opportunities, those key opportunities of getting those clients, closing those deals, closing those contracts, and your English, letting you down. I don't want your English to let you down and to prevent you from those amazing opportunities, international opportunities where you're using English. So that's why I have my 2 programs. I have the Fluent English Lawyer Success Roadmap. This is a coaching experience where I accompany you in a coaching session where I assess your English, give you feedback on your English, personalized feedback, and create a 21-day fluency roadmap to get you going and to get you moving from stuck to fluent over that short period of time, where I will also be with you on WhatsApp and email support to give you feedback on your English, and also to keep you motivated, to stay motivated with the program of listening and also activating your English using different activities personalized to your needs and to your level. That's the first program, and it's a great way to try out my service to see if that it would help you and get you going. And then, of course, there is the accelerator. This is my not 3 month. Yes, it is. It's my 12-week program, and it's the Fluent English Lawyer Accelerator. It's all about, it's designed to help you with your English speaking fluency with my 4 part framework, my English speaking fluency framework, where we go through all of the steps. We look at your confidence, your fluency, your speaking clarity, and your speaking your communication skills, so that you're really prepared, and you can speak confident English, you can speak fluent English, and show up to all of those situations with confidence in English, so that you're ready for that next step in your international career. So, thank you for joining me in this recording, in this discussion today, all about formal and informal English. Please do, share with me after if you have any questions or any feedback as well. And I'm not sure what we're doing next week. I will keep you posted on that. And thank you very much for watching, and talk to you in the next one. Bye.